competition to stand out with what we think, how we vote, what we are for, what we're against. It's a game of my word versus your word. And for the enemy, this is his device and his delight. He seeks to divide us by distraction, creating such noise that we can't stand to think clearly anymore. So exhausted by the dissension that we are too tired and too stressed and too weak to keep fighting for what we know is the right thing to do. And yet, while the enemy defends his rule over the air, he knows that Jesus holds the ground. With a single breath, our King can overturn what appears as final. He has the authority. He holds the keys to life and to death and to all things visible and invisible. Even the smallest preborn child is on his radar. No act of injustice escapes the judgment of our God. Nothing is hidden from his gaze. He is the great defender of life. Every heartbeat from every era, every life story begins by his word. He gives value and purpose and meaning to every soul, and we are called to follow him, to choose life and not death for every child, every family, every mother and father whom God values and loves and cherishes and for whom he chose to die. We are gathered here because we want to retune our hearts to his word, to rise above the noise, to make our firm and final resolution to follow only his voice. Even when the cost is great and the journey to hope has been prolonged, we will persevere, knowing fully that Jesus has the final word. Because he values every life, we value every life. From the preborn to the final breath, Jesus defends the weak. We stand by his word. We stand for life.
We stand for life. Life that's in its prime, life that's in its winter, life that's in the womb. From conception to natural death, we all stand for life. When we fully understand that we are created in God's image, it changes everything. We know that life has intrinsic value and is worthy to be affirmed and protected. Any day now, we pray and hope to see a historic moment for the dignity of human life and the protection of our preborn neighbors. If the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade, it will be a historic day for life, and we will celebrate the thousands and thousands of lives that will be saved. Yet while it's critical that we have lives that defend and protect life, and we will pursue every legal option available to restrict the taking of life, an equally important goal is for abortion to also be unthinkable and unnecessary in the hearts and minds of our culture. Only when we see life holistically, with inherent value, rooted in the image of God, will there be widespread change in our culture. A post-Roe world is good, but a post-abortion world is what we continue to fervently work to achieve by reaching these women where they are in their time of crisis. Laws are critical, but they cannot change the fact that there will still be thousands of women who will face an unplanned pregnancy. Afraid, unprepared, they feel they have no support and unsure of what to do and where to turn. The work does not end if Roe versus Wade is overturned. It is the beginning of a new chapter for us. It's critical that we inspire, disciple, equip, and mobilize a new generation to defend the dignity of all human life, transforming our culture so that they see abortion as unnecessary and unthinkable. I know some of you may be thinking, when is abortion ever really necessary? When we say we want to make abortion unnecessary in our lifetime, we don't use that term because we believe it's necessary. We absolutely believe it is unnecessary. But because so many women believe abortion is their only option, we're speaking their language to them because they feel scared, oftentimes trapped, shamed, and don't know where to go, which makes these women feel it is the only choice to make. While we also use the word unnecessary to directly counter the constant narrative lies that Planned Parenthood has fed and used to prey upon women for the last 50 years, including in your situation, an abortion is necessary for you to live a full life. An abortion is necessary for you to earn a living. An abortion is necessary for you to flourish. This is what these women have heard, and this is what they feel in their time of desperation. This is what they believe. We don't need to be an echo chamber in our own community, using words and language that we approve and that make us comfortable. Rather, we must reach these abortion-minded and abortion-vulnerable women where they are and speak with empathy and relevancy to their situation, which is often messy and complex and dire. I want to share a testimony with you. And I may get a little bit emotional, but I think it's really important for you all to hear this today. Monique was just this kind of woman. Her name was changed for her privacy and her safety. When Monique was 6 years old, she was removed from her mother and her parental rights were terminated. From that time until she aged out of the foster care system at 18, she had 13 foster families. While she was in the foster care system, a family adopted her, and the father physically abused her in that family. She was removed from that home, and the parental rights of that adoptive family were terminated. When Monique aged out of the foster care system, she had no family, no support, and nowhere to go in time of crisis. She began using drugs and alcohol to numb the pain from her trauma, which led her to being trafficked, and eventually she found herself unexpectedly pregnant with her first child. After her first child was taken from her, shortly thereafter, about a year, she found herself in her second unplanned pregnancy. She doesn't know Christ. She has no family. Against all odds, Monique carried her baby to term. And so, after her first pregnancy, DHS came along and took away her first child, terminated her parental rights because she was unable to care for her child, continuing down this very, very dark path that she had. She had a second unplanned pregnancy, which I just spoke about a minute ago. This time, Monique was committed to having an abortion. That was her intention. She, again, had no family. She had no protection. She could barely care for herself and had no support, nowhere to go, no church. Through a mutual friend, Monique met an advocate from a pro-life organization who began to walk alongside her in love, compassion, and empathy, and show her that she had other choices. The advocate told her she would foster her daughter, connect her to a church, and help her with resources to provide ongoing support through a continuum of care. Again, counter to the necessary message she was told by culture, Monique courageously chose life, and today, baby E is alive. Abortion became unnecessary. This is a picture of baby E. And by the way, if you all will take an opportunity to pray for baby E. Abortion became unnecessary for her because God sent someone to her and told her she didn't have to believe that lie. Today, baby E is alive and ready for a forever family. We need to recognize that most women like Monique who are considering abortion are doing so because they feel afraid, overwhelmed, unsupported, and with limited options. Some can hardly support themselves, let alone a child. Some are pressured by their partner and don't have anyone else in their life to help them. Others think that the church will shame them because they're pregnant outside of marriage. So as the church is facing a potential post-Roe world, we need to welcome these women with open arms, love them, value them, support them, not criminalize them, and yes, communicate a way that reaches them with a sense of empathy, all while keeping Christ's love and compassion for the broken and the hurting front and center. Which is why we're excited to announce the Stand for Life Conference in Washington, D.C. in January 2023 on the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. This event is being created to unify leaders, influencers, and organizations and the church to strategically enhance the holistic pro-life movement through the next generation. Our desire is to work to see change in our culture to one that affirms and protects the dignity of human life by engaging, educating, and equipping others to build a society that believes everyone is made in the image of God, has inherent value, and should be treated with honor and respect. We want the church to be the first place that a woman goes in their time of crisis to receive care and support, not judgment and condemnation. So let us stand for life in this historic moment by unifying our efforts, continuing our critical work, while making the church the most supportive and hopeful place to go in these women's time of need. And then perhaps we will turn this moment into an opportunity to change our culture's view on life. Will you join me in standing for life?
We certainly pray if the decision is overturned that then we will have activities in our states regarding legislation and legal decisions. Think of that as one prong, but as we just heard in our testimony, we must be prepared to think of the other prong as the presence of the local church, Southern Baptist churches, in our various communities. Let me read a portion of scripture from Luke chapter 15, the opening verses. Then drew near unto him all the publicans and sinners for to hear him. And the Pharisees and scribes murmured, saying, This man receiveth sinners and eateth with them. Jesus and the religious leaders had different visions regarding how to engage those who were far from God. As we go into this next season, we are going to be challenged as we encounter men and women who've been influenced by the rhetoric of Planned Parenthood and other pro-abortion advocates who've been influenced by the lies that these kinds of things are necessary and it's the only choice that they have, or it is the best choice that they have. And we, as the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ, and Southern Baptists in particular, have to have a different, peculiar, holy, sanctified, loving witness in our local communities. If we move down from the federal level to the state level, we still must be extremely concerned about what an abortion-minded woman or an abortion-minded man think about the issue in our local community. And so I just want to urge you to think of the posture of our congregations. Pastor, the posture of our pulpit. Deacons, the posture of our benevolence ministries. I would encourage you to think of the contrast between Jesus' attitude towards sinful people in the Gospels versus the attitude of the religious leaders towards sinful people in the gospel. We follow a Lord who came to seek and to save that which was lost. We serve a Lord who said, the whole do not need a physician. So we know going into the scenario that we're dealing with messy, unclean, world, flesh influenced people and scenarios. So when you come into the filth of the world influenced by entities like Planned Parenthood, do we come in like the Lord who says, come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest? Or do we come in like the Pharisees and the scribes murmuring in Luke 15:1-2? Tone is going to matter, brothers and sisters. When we get back into the states and states are handling all these things, and every state is not Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia, we also want to have a firm congregational witness in places like Washington, California, and New York. So may we think about these things. One, our rhetoric. Abortion is sin. But may we think of our rhetoric as we seek to make our congregations places that the weary and confused might come for refuge. Two, our engagement with foster care and the adoption systems within our states. If we are going to create a culture where women in crisis will take a pregnancy to term, we've got to create a culture where they know that many Christians desire to adopt. They've got to know that children won't linger in foster care and adoption systems within our states. We can do two things at the same time. I was once a Tennessee Baptist, and my good friend, Dr. Randy Davis, has been a staunch advocate for specific policy and legislative matters. And also, Tennessee Baptists have had firm commitments through Tennessee Baptist Children's Homes, and congregations have been places of refuge where broken families could come and find assistance. We've got to do two things at the same time. A friend from a southern state told me that a friend of his who works in adoption placements is struggling to find families to receive adoption adoptable kids and to participate in foster care. And to make matters worse, he said, I'm struggling to find Christian homes, and I can almost readily find LGBTQ type homes. Be it to our shame if we decry the sin of abortion, and yet the LGBTQ folk beat us to the foster care and adoption line. Thirdly, I would encourage you to be mindful of non-public abortion-minded methodologies. We need our sidewalk ministries. My wife and I, for decades, have supported a crisis pregnancies ministry that our church in Louisville started decades ago. So we need those ministries, but we have to contend for the minds of abortion-minded women, because there are non-public ways to have an abortion. Pills can be sent to someone's house, various kind of just non-public methodologies are there. So we must contend for the thought process of abortion-minded women. And finally, we must think about our congregations' on the ground, salt light reputation in our community. The sinners in Luke 15 were sinners. There's no confusion about the fact that they're sinners. So the religious leaders, the scribes and the Pharisees knew they were sinners, and Jesus knew they were sinners. So the issue is not, is there sin in verse 1 and 2? The issue is Jesus responded to the sinners differently than the scribes and the Pharisees. And so as it regards abortion-minded women and men in our neighborhoods where our local churches are, I'm not talking about the steps of the Supreme Court. I'm not talking about the Congress where we walk through when we're doing the March for Life. The 3-mile circle around your church. Will abortion-minded men and women think of your church in the tone of Jesus or in the tone of the Pharisees and the scribes? May our churches be equipped for this post-Roe world.
Thank you for that powerful presentation. I now call Don Currens to the microphone to share the results of the race for second vice president. We need to do this right now, then we will proceed to questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the time of our last ballot, there was 8,132 messengers registered. Okay. For the office of the second vice president runoff, Alex Sands received 2,121 votes, representing 59.71%. Rudolph Pond was, I forgot, Deanne's Ponds received 1,426 votes, representing 40.15%. There was 5 disallowed, representing 0.14%.
Alex Sands receives 2,121 votes at 59.71%. Rodolfo Diaz Pons, 1,426 votes at 40.15%. and Alex Sands is elected second vice president of the Southern Baptist Convention. There's a question for the ERLC on 2A.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. My name is Brian Gunter. I am a messenger and the senior pastor of First Baptist Church in Livingston, Louisiana. Earlier this year, I worked with my state legislators to introduce House Bill 813 in the Louisiana legislature. HB 813 was a bill that sought to immediately end all abortion in my state by providing equal protection to the child in the womb. Simply stated, if life begins at conception, then our laws should protect life from the moment of conception. So you can imagine my surprise when you signed a letter dated May 12th urging all state lawmakers across America to oppose this bill and others like it because it would make it a crime for a woman to kill her own child by abortion. I thought that Southern Baptists, when we say we're pro-life, we mean that no person should be able to murder an innocent child in the womb. So this is my question. Is it really your position that the mother who willfully kills her own child by abortion is never guilty before God, and she should never face any consequences under the law?
Thank you, brother, for that question. We're in a little bit of an unorthodox format here because I thought questions were coming at the end.
Let me explain, first of all, the chair made a mistake in interrupting at the time we interrupted to give the report on the election for second vice president. There was, we moved on thinking the ERLC presentation was complete, and it isn't. It would be best if they made their presentation and then come back to your question. Would you welcome that, sir?
Well, Mr. President, I'll take it now. I'll answer him now.
Right ahead.
Yep. Brother, here's the deal. We agree on the bottom line. We want abortion ended. We want it ended today. We want it ended tomorrow. We want to end it as soon as humanly possible. But while we hold fast to that goal and continually shout, that is what we want, why not support legislation that promises to save one more life in any context? I will say this, to get the record straight, no letter was sent directly to Louisiana about a Louisiana piece of legislation. Right after the draft opinion from the Supreme Court was leaked, National Right to Life approached us, as well as 75 other pro-life organizations from around the country to say, hey, this would make sense, since functionally, if this were to be law, or this were to be the final decision, abortion will be returned to the states. It would seem to make sense that we send a letter to legislative leaders in all 50 states to let them know what the principles of the pro-life movement are. And so in a state like California, for example, where we are, it makes sense to send that because they're going to have this issue right in front of them. And in a state like California, they're going to have to take any available win where they can. Here's the reality. You're not going to get me to say that I want to throw mothers behind bars. That's not the view of this entity. That is not the view of this convention. It is not the view of the pro-life movement. That was proven yet again today. I believe the same principles that Jesus used in John 4 and John 8 apply right here. Maybe instead of rushing in like a mob, we instead rush in with the truth given to us by the author of life, showing we are able to bear the burdens of others and offer the healing that comes with grace, just as has been poured out for us, Mr. President.
Thank you. We're going to proceed with the report from, so the chair recognizes Brent Leatherwood as the acting president of the Ethics Religious Liberty Commission for his report, and then we will proceed with questions following that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just before I begin, I have a point of order. and this goes to the Committee on the Order of Business, I should never again have to go after my vice chair, Kevin Smith, preaches.
That's true.
No, Mr. President, actually, I want to start my comments, the report for the ERLC, with just a quick word of gratitude to you messengers. Our team is especially grateful to you for the show of support that you gave our entity earlier today. Thank you so much on behalf of the ERLC. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That foundational phrase has been with us since the beginning of our republic, and those words laid down an important marker in human history. They signified that this new national experiment that our forefathers were initiating would be unlike any other. Instead of a nation governed by the will of man or the wishes of a monarch, ours would be a society that prioritizes opportunity for each and every individual. Yet those lofty ideals have far too often been out of reach, or kept out of reach, for many. But thankfully, in many cases, the church has been there to point to a different way, a better way, and in doing so, prick the conscience of the state. There's a long Baptist history of doing so. And so it is to this present day. As we have just shown with our Stand for Life presentation, this convention continues to provide a needed word on some of the very fundamental questions that our society wrestles with. Over the last 50 years, the most vulnerable neighbors in our midst have been taken advantage of, dispatched without care, and discarded without thought. Over 60 million precious preborn lives, all made in the image of God, have systematically been robbed of their ability to pursue the very essential blessings of life, liberty, and happiness. All of this stems from a wrong-headed decision by our U.S. Supreme Court that was handed down in 1973. That year, the majority opinion in the disastrous Roe v. Wade decision contained a phrase that has reverberated down the years in American culture: the unwanted child. By affirming those words, the court allowed generations of preborn children to be robbed of their dignity and their lives, an atrocity unlike any other. As Christians who recognize the Genesis 3 reality in which we live, we understand nothing short of Christ's return will truly repair the brokenness that affects our relationships in a fallen world. But we should not fail to recognize the ways this opinion did harm here to relationships. It essentially created a permission structure that allowed the abortion industry to come between the mother and the child. Because of this, countless mothers have been sold the lie that their lives will be burdened, less rich and rewarding, and ultimately less satisfying with the child in the picture. Thankfully, we live in a nation that has the capacity to rectify injustices of the past. That truth has guided the pro-life movement for years. Should the leaked draft opinion from the Supreme Court remain the same, we will see this occur once more, for we will witness the most significant achievement in the history of the pro-life movement. If that day comes, this convention of churches, you, as Southern Baptists, will have played an instrumental role in getting us to that moment. For nearly 40 years, our churches have made advocacy for life a priority. Countless hours have been spent preaching the truth of God's word, pleading for abortion to end, serving mothers who have been targeted, ministering to children through adoption and foster care services, discussing the moral ramifications of the destruction of life with our nation's policymakers, and maintaining a consistent presence in the courtrooms of our country. All of our efforts will have made a difference. By overruling the Roe precedent, we will begin the process of saving a new generation of families from enduring these awful and false narratives. But know what I just said there. Begin. While overturning Roe will go a long way toward correcting the errors of the past made by the state, it is up to Christians to realize that such a decision, as momentous as it would be, is not the end of the challenge before us. In fact, it will represent the starting point for a new pro-life generation, because we will not be satisfied with a post-Roe world. We are striving for a post-abortion world. For all the good that a favorable decision would do, there will still be mothers in crisis and families in chaos. It will also mean that the conversations we have before the Supreme Court or in the marbled corridors of Congress will now take place right next door. Your ERLC has been diligently preparing for this moment, whether it's with our Stand for Life event, pastor convenings, our forthcoming church curriculum, or the continued ministry of our Psalm 139 project. We have pursued every feasible avenue to both equip the church and continue our advocacy for life before a watching world. Let me expand briefly on one of those items. Over 20 years ago, under the leadership of Richard Land, your ERLC began the Psalm 139 Project, an initiative to place life-saving ultrasound machines in pro-life clinics across the country. Because we use private donations and not cooperative program funding for this program, we typically place 1 to 2 machines per year. But 2 years ago, under the leadership of Russell Moore, we announced an ambitious goal to place 50 ultrasound machines by the 50-year mark of Roe versus Wade in January of 2023. Behind me is a map. In pink, you will see all of the places where Planned Parenthood is located. In white, you will see all the places where Psalm 139 is striving to combat Planned Parenthood with a message of life. Why is this important? Because the technology behind these machines demolishes the lies used by Planned Parenthood to prey upon mothers, and as such, they are essential. And that is why today, I am pleased to announce publicly, for the first time, the ERLC has secured the necessary outside funding to not only meet our goal of 50 placements, but to exceed that goal 6 months ahead of schedule. And here's the great thing about it. Partnership made this possible as we joined with the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention, the North Carolina Baptist State Convention, the Alabama Baptist Convention, and the Florida Baptist Foundation to make this happen. That last point is especially meaningful to me. When I was placed in this role last year, our #1 priority became fortifying relationships across the SBC. We knew, as the old saying goes, cooperation rides on the rails of relationship. Not only did this staff of faithful servants set out to serve in that manner, they've done so in a way that ensures more children will be able to take their first breath outside the womb, an incredible victory. The fact is, we have a talented team at the ERLC, and it is such a joy to be alongside them in this season, however long it lasts, to come to work each day and know that I am laboring with such a gifted group of individuals who redefine the term joyful warriors. You see, it takes a person with a special makeup to work at the one entity of the SBC where all of your work is carried out in the arena for all to see and to offer their thoughts. But that comes with the territory in this role. It has been that way ever since this entity began receiving the sacrificial gifts of Southern Baptists through the cooperative program. For 75 years now, the ERLC has been privileged to be a part of this framework, and we're grateful for it. To commemorate this, we've created this booklet about our 75 years of Southern Baptist advocacy in the public square, which we've handed out all week. And later this summer, we hope to send a copy to every church in the SBC as a token of our appreciation. Your giving has powered this organization, and without you sending this organization into the public square, none of this would be possible. In closing, I want to say this. I stand before you thankful for the actions taken at this convention related to sexual abuse. For too long, wickedness has festered in our midst, but last year you began the process of rooting it out and bringing it into light. Many doubted, and some even calculated, that when we as a convention were confronted with these horrors, we would flinch. You said no. You remembered the words from Isaiah and James that tell us to be a voice for those who have been rendered vulnerable. Your ERLC seeks to complement this course you've charted. Our Caring Well materials will be updated with new resources coming to aid our churches and new initiatives planned. And our ERLC trustee board has wisely decided to move forward with an SBC sexual abuse assessment that will be a cooperative look at how churches have responded to abuse and develop the resources needed to prevent it. All that I have recounted for you today is driven by the same Spirit, a Spirit that leads us to speak up for the vulnerable and the marginalized, those who are seen and those who are not, those who are with us and those who are to come. We shouldn't miss the parallels here. The same God who speaks to us about life also speaks to us about abuse, just as he does in so many other areas with the same authoritative voice. What a powerful witness this establishes for our church. For if we correct our errors, repudiate the misdeeds of our own past, and seek justice for those who have suffered, we will set a much-needed example for a culture in need of the same. In doing so, I believe we will help establish an actual culture of life right here where God has called us, creating, if you will, a more perfect union where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is truly available to every individual, born and preborn alike. Mr. President, it'd be an honor to take additional questions.
Thank you, Brett. Are there questions concerning the report? I recognize microphone 1A.
Yes, sir, Mr. President and President of the ERLC. My name is Paul Thompson. I pastor the Eastside Baptist Church in Twin Falls, Idaho. In the state of Idaho, over 1,600 preborn children will be dismantled, ripped, sucked, chemically burned through induced abortions, with or without a Roe decision. Of those 1,600 who will be murdered in my state, 287 of them happen in my city, the city of Twin Falls, Idaho, where they are murdered. My question to you is direct, and I desire a direct answer. My question is, in November of 2022, I'm running for Idaho Senate because no one in my city and few in my state will stand for the preborn. So I'm running for this office asking the citizens of the state of Idaho to appoint me to the state Senate. And I'm asking you, will you please not write letters to the state of Idaho to reduce the efforts and to eliminate the opportunity that we could speak for the preborn, and that not mothers, but that murderers can no longer murder children in my state?
I think as you have seen here today, our heart is for life. And I don't think that anybody in good faith can contest that. The reality is, we're going to continue speaking for life just in the same ways that we always have. We want to make sure that it is illegal. We want abortion banned. And so we would join with you in that effort. But we also want to make it unthinkable and unnecessary. And we use that language. That's very purposeful language that we use. We use illegal because that speaks for the child. We want it to be illegal to take the life of a preborn child. So we use that term. We are asking for the government to step in and save the life of that child. We use unnecessary because that's speaking to these mothers where they are. They are continually messaged by Planned Parenthood and the predatory abortion industry that preys upon them and sells them lie after lie after lie. And we want to offer them a different way. And we also use the word unthinkable. And that word has been used for ages now by the SBC. We use the word unthinkable because we want to cast a vision for the culture, calling the culture to a better way to truly establish a culture of life. So brother, let me hear me say this. I am thankful that you are stepping up to serve the citizens of your state. Good luck with that. And we will be there with you to save lives, serve mothers, and ban abortion, and go after the abortion industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We are out of time, but we would like to, if it's okay with the body, we would like to extend for 2 more questions. 8A, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I'm Wes Brown, pastor of First Baptist Plummerville in Plummerville, Arkansas. The previous speaker rightly referred to a willful abortion as a sin. My question is it a sin before God by the mother who willfully participates in it? And if so, which law of God did she break?
The 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill.
Microphone 9A with a question, please.
Yes, Dr. Leatherwood.
I'm
My
not a
name
doctor.
is-
Let me stop you there. I appreciate you. It looks like it's Jared. Jared,
Yes, sir.
I am not a doctor, so just call me Brent, please.
Okay. Brent, I'm Jared Moore, messenger from Cumberland Homesteads Baptist Church. And I have a question about your slogan for Stand for Life, making abortion unnecessary. If you believe that abortion is a violation of thou shalt not murder, then you're saying making murder unnecessary, which implies that it's necessary. I think you should change it. If a mother sees that, she's going to think it's necessary. Unless she talks to y'all, it could cost babies' lives.
All right, thank you. Would you like to speak to that?
Thank you for that, Jared. I did touch on this in my previous answer, but actually, I'm going to let you hear from my colleague, Elizabeth Graham, who has done an incredible job. Let me just take a moment to say this. She's done an incredible job as our VP of Life Initiatives. Dr. Moore, when he was president, gave her a very tough assignment. He wanted to make sure that all of our life initiatives were housed under one office, and she has stepped up to lead so well, and she is leading our Stand for Life efforts, and she is going to respond more directly to you, Mr. Jared.
Jared, I think you said you're at microphone 8. I can't really see you out there, but thank you for that question. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the fact that we have the incredible privilege of partnering with other like-minded organizations through a Collective Impact Alliance. And so as a part of our Collective Impact Alliance work, for the last 5 years, the ERLC has been the lead on church engagement for this work. It's 12 national pro-life organizations and ministries that work in various areas of the pro-life movement, representing adoption and foster care, baby rescue and intervention, legal and legislative. And we also, once a year, bring together a large group of pro-life organizations for that as well. And there's 100 ministries that are participating in that annually. And as a part of that work, we together have launched this initiative called Stand for Life. And the goal of Stand for Life for the conference and the agreed upon language is that we want to see, one, abortion illegal, which we discussed earlier. We want to see abortion unthinkable through seeing hearts, minds, attitudes, and behaviors changed through discipleship and curriculum in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And third, we want to address the underlying systemic drivers for why women find themselves in a position that they feel that they have no other option but to seek abortion. And so there are many things being worked on, but this was the call to action agreed upon by all organizations for that tagline. So we will do some work on behalf of Southern Baptists to advocate to include unthinkable and unnecessary. We heard the concerns. We have already made an adjustment, and I appreciate you sharing that with me directly and having the opportunity to respond to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, ERLC, for your report. I thank your staff and your board. God bless each and every one of you. The chair recognizes Ben Mandrell, the president and CEO